Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the BB School and to tonight's meeting on the proposed redevelopment of the former Malden Hospital. My name's Gary Christenson, Mayor of the City of Malden. And let me say first that we will not accept any questions dealing with snow. This has been the snowiest 7-day period in state history. And so my only friends remaining are the students in the Malden Public Schools. So just a couple of quick notes before we begin. As you know, outside we do have refreshments for anybody that wants some during the meeting. Also, upstairs to the right are where the bathrooms are located. And once again, I want to make you aware that Councillor Matheson to my right has begun to distribute a survey for you to look at this evening. Just as a way of a little background, which will be very brief, during the past 4 years as mayor, we've tried to reach out as much as possible to let investors know and people looking to move to Malden that we are open to talking with them. And so at a meeting last year held at the Malden Public Library by Economic and Housing Secretary Greg Bielecki, I was able to meet Tony Green from the Fellsmere Housing Group. He indicated that he thought Malden had a lot to offer. So he began to look around as to what possibilities there might be for him to invest in our city. He chose the Malden Hospital site as that possibility. We then began to meet with him and vet him to see whether or not he would meet, my expectations, of which he did. Then we included the Malden City Council to make sure that, he had something to offer to their liking as well. Once we were able to, see his vision, we then obviously wanted to hear from you. So in December, we had our first meeting about what his group saw for the former Malden Hospital site. After that meeting was over, we took what you identified as some of the issues from the presentation, which included density, traffic, additional green space, doing some of the roads over that abut the hospital site, Fellsmere Pond, all those sorts of things. And we raised them with him at a meeting after the initial neighborhood meeting. He's here tonight to let you know, based on some of the issues that were raised at the first meeting, on what can be done further to make this something palatable for the neighborhood and the Malden community. We also said that night that we wanted to first have a meeting with you privately before hearing from the developer on exactly what you saw from that initial meeting. And so that's why we're here tonight. I can assure you of this. Absolutely, positively, unequivocally, no decisions have been made on our end. If you look at my track record, I really respect the will of the people. A couple of years ago, there was a proposal to add an independent football league at McDonald Stadium. I supported it. The neighbors didn't, and therefore, it wasn't adopted. Down the street last summer, there was a proposal to do some traffic improvements at Highland and Pleasant. I thought it was a pretty good idea. Majority of the residents did not, so we did not. Same thing's going to happen here tonight. If this is a proposal that is completely off kilter, then we'll go back to the drawing board and see what else we can do. But I also want to make sure you know, too, I know how near and dear this is to you. And so the Office of the Mayor has really taken the lead from the City Council, Councillor Matheson, Councillor Spadafora, Councillor DeMarie. I know they all live in the area, so we are really following their lead on this. So before I turn it over to them, I just want to introduce a few others that are here tonight if you have additional questions based on tonight's presentation. Debbie Burke is here from the Malden Redevelopment Authority. We also have Michelle Ramiro, who is the principal planner for the city of Malden. And we also have the person that I'm told usually gets done, things done in the office of the mayor, and that's Maria Luis, the chief of staff. And we also have off to my left, Councillor David DiArcangelo. Dave, thank you for being here. Debbie DiMaria, representing the city as Councillor at Large. And then I'm going to turn this over to the moderator for this first part of tonight's presentation, and that's John Matheson. Once again, thank you for being here. It gives me great reassurance that you care about the city, and for that I couldn't be more grateful to you. 44 days until spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Christenson, and I want to thank all of you for being here, coming out in the snow. I know it's been a great challenge. We had a lot of people at the last meeting. The developer made its proposal. They've taken that constructive input that we've given them, and they've come back. As the mayor has said, this is very, very early in the process. We're committed to open communication with the residents. It's an honor to be here. I live right in this neighborhood. I'm your Ward 3 Councillor, John Matheson. I'm Council President this year. It's an honor that we have the participation of the Mayor's office in this, and our councilors at large, and frankly, the full City Council. With that being said, we wanted to start a little bit earlier today. I know it's a little early for some folks that are fighting the traffic and the snow to be home. But we wanted to have a neighborhood meeting without the developer in the room, so we could be candid. We could have an open forum, a discussion. This is our town and our neighborhood, and it concerns us very nearly and dearly. I miss the Malden Hospital. It's a place that when I was young, I received medical treatment, and I know a lot of people have said, why can't we have a hospital there in the future? Unfortunately, under current market conditions, that's not really in the cards. But we do have an opportunity, a rare opportunity, to do something with 14.6 acres of land, and we need to decide what's best for our own community. With that in mind, I created a short survey, and the point of this is so that you could let us know, without the developer in the room, how you feel about apartments, about mixed residential types, about the density that's being proposed. You could see an updated proposal in here, and the Fellsmere Group, which also developed Pine Hills, same folks. Councillor Spadafora and I drove down separately to view their other development as part of our diligence. And I've told them in no uncertain terms that I'm not a supporter or a detractor of their proposal. I'm here to facilitate their communication with the community. But I am also a resident of this neighborhood, just like you. I live on Bauer Street. I use Cushing Road and Savin Street and Murray Hill frequently. This would affect me as dearly as it would affect you, and I really want to hear from you. You've had an opportunity now to take a look at this survey, and you can see. And I'd also like to add that we're being televised tonight. I know a lot of people aren't able to make it, and for that reason, this open forum is going to be available online for people to view after the fact. So certainly we want your input. It's very important to us, and in fact, it's our job. So with that being said, I'm going to take questions from you, and after we have our discussion between the neighbors and the ward councilor, I'm going to turn it over at 6:30 to that Fellsmere group that we spoke of. Councillor Spadafora, who's been involved in this process as well, is going to come up here and help facilitate the discussion with that entity. So with that being said, let me hear from you about the proposal you see at the top of this survey. And this survey will also help us see who's attended and how they feel. You can be anonymous if you like, but again, we want open channels of communication. If you have reasons why this proposal isn't quite to your liking, there's an opportunity here for you to discuss that with us, whether it be the cars or the apartments. If you go down a little bit further, we're asking you quite candidly what exactly you feel is possible in light of the size of the parcel and the market conditions, what you feel you'd like to see up there. If you go a little bit further, there is a freelance piece where you can say anything that maybe we missed, or you can let us know how you'd like to be involved in the future. Again, we're committed to being as open with the channels of communication as possible. And I can tell you I've been to other town meetings, and Malden has gotten quite good at participating with the residents. And as the mayor highlighted, he's done that quite fairly with us. There's also a piece for green space. Obviously, no matter what ends up happening, there's going to be some people interested in having either some park space or some preserved green buffer, which is something this developer is committed to maintaining. Environmental issues is something that I've been a big proponent of in the City Council, including tree planting and open space. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you have something you'd like to add, this is a great time to begin the discussion.
Yes, my name is Marge Mayers. I see that there's a difference from 398 to 375, but how does that break down? How does this differ, other, from the original proposal that it is?
Yeah, so some of the information the developer is going to come in and explain to you. Primarily, it's a reduction in the number of apartments. Approximately 35 or so fewer apartments, and they've increased the number of cottages, and they've increased the number of condominiums, all totaled probably about 15 or so on that score. I don't have those exact numbers. I did leave some of this for the second piece for the developer to discuss with us. But one of the things we did hear loud and clear at the last meeting was that it was a high density of apartments. Clearly, we know that apartments are being built around the city right now. There's a number of them coming online. The question here is, how many apartments would we be comfortable with? What kind of density is going to work up there? There are pretty hard and fast statistics on how many automobiles you'd expect in light of these types of living units. That's listed here. And in light of all the different living styles that will be there, you can see a total of estimated vehicles. That's under the current proposal as modified from the prior proposal. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you. And you, sir.
The lady to the right, I already asked Mike. I apologize.
Did you want to speak? Thank you.
I'm Bob Goodwin, 81 Pine Street, and I want to thank you, Councillor Matheson, for something that you've already done for the neighborhood. I saw an article about Fellsbury Pond. Maybe some of you noticed that the perimeter of it has been reinforced and it was eroding into the pond, and I've been enjoying that upgrade, and I found out that Councillor Matheson spearheaded that and found the money and put it all together to happen. And I mention that because there's a perception that I've heard of a lot of people that say that the council is all lined up with the developers and private interests rather than with what's really in the best interest of the people of Malden. And this is evidence to me that isn't quite fair. And so I just would like to thank you for that. It's easy to get adversarial because there are very strong feelings and differences of opinion. But I think we can work together. The other thing I want to say is that I called the mayor yesterday, and I was very grateful for the time that he gave me to ask if this meeting could be postponed, because so many people, it's just a bad time. 5:30 is a bad time for people to come. My wife can't come, and a ton of others. And he said he didn't think that was possible, but he made a suggestion that if there are people who want to see alternatives, and that was one of the strong sentences that I got for the last meeting, people wanted to see alternative proposals, not just this high-density housing development, that we can have our own meeting. So if after this meeting people are interested in that, I got to sign a treaty, we can give information, and I thank the mayor for that idea.
Well, thank you very much. Those comments really mean a lot to me, and I appreciate that you noticed the work that's been going on at Fellsmere Pond, and it's something that I've been a strong proponent of, and it can't happen alone. I've been fortunate to have a lot of great people to work with, but But we did create a renovation plan for that pond. We've put a lot of work into it. I've been fortunate through the City Council and the Mayor supporting some of my initiatives to fund those renovations. And the state has come forward and just about matched those funds. And with that being said, this present developer, I do want to give them one piece of credit. They've said if they're fortunate enough to be the developer of that site, that they're going to contribute a sizable amount of money to future dredging or cleanup of the water and perhaps removal of debris or reshaping of the bottom topography to the tune of about $400,000. So it is quite significant. You know, again, it shouldn't necessarily make a decision for you, but thank you so much for recognizing that, and I appreciate your remarks. Yes, sir. You have the microphone. If you have a comment, please feel free. Otherwise, you come on up and let this young lady have it.
Could you explain this here? Do you support a mix of different resident types, which includes apartment buildings, in order to have the site developed?
Yeah, that's right. So as you can see, the developer is proposing the mix of residential types that you see at the top of the form. That's their proposal. That's what they feel is going to be marketable and profitable for them to make this big investment. And the question here is, it's placed there to ask you if you support a mix of any degree, really, but a mix that would include apartments, because that seems to be what developers are interested in doing up there.
What do you mean by a mix of different residents?
Apartments, assisted living, condominiums, single-family homes.
So what we have left out low income, veterans, and people with disabilities.
Well, I certainly didn't exclude them. I mean, that could be involved in a mix, of course.
Well, it's very vague.
That was intentionally so.
I know.
I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth. I'm giving you an opportunity to speak as to what you see there. But this young lady in the red blouse, sir, if you want to bring the microphone up. Thank you, Councillor D'Arcangelo. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Denise Flynn. I'm on Clifton Street.
Hey, Denise.
And this is my first meeting coming to this.
Thank you for coming.
I have very limited information, although I'm very excited about it. But I'm curious about, I see all these things about cars. So is there going to be garage parking, underground parking? Are the cottages going to have attached garage parking? And do we know if all of these units that are coming are going to have laundry in the unit itself?
Yeah, well, the developer is going to be able to shed a little bit more light on that, but and it is available on their website, Fellsmere Group, LLC.com. I don't know, I'm not sure if LLC is actually in the web address, but they'll tell you that. As part of their last proposal, they had drawings, schematics for you to see. The apartment buildings are going to have parking underground within the structure, so not visible on the surface. The single-family homes would have on-street parking around a loop of road space that would be created through the site. Yep, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor, if you want to...
Hi, Kim Brooks, Ivy out of the 40.6 acres, do you know how much has been set aside, or how much the current plan takes up for housing as opposed to how much is going to be green space or other space?
Yeah, excellent question. It's 14.6 acres, and we're fortunate enough to have the city planner here. She actually gave us a very informative breakdown, which tells us with existing road frontage, how many single-family or multifamily homes, in light of the minimum lot size, could go up there. So it gives us a lot of information about the size of the space up there. The current proposal would preserve all the existing trees which encircle the entire area. A lot of that topography is not completely buildable in light of the pitch, but they are committed to preserving that because it would create a privacy with the community and of course a buffer for the rest of us, between us and the community, that would be up on that hill. Of the 14.6 acres, I can tell you that 3 acres of land is actually in the Medford side. And there would be at least twice that amount would be the amount of existing natural tree buffer that exists there now.
But what about green space, not just
Yeah.
Percentage is green space as opposed to building space?
Yeah, excellent question. My recollection of their proposal would be that the piece of land where the Baird House sat on Murray Hill Road would not be developed. They would leave that, and they'd leave the existing tree buffer. The rest of the buildable lot would be part of the development. So we'd be looking at about 10 acres or so, and they'll give you more specific information. The council will move the. Oh, go ahead, ma'am. You have the microphone.
Yeah, my name is Jan Engelman, and I have a question that hasn't been addressed very much here, which has to do with the height of the buildings. Mm-hmm. So the developer said at the first meeting that the height would be no higher than a hospital. But the way that the concept plan goes, which is 5 stories, as I understand it.
Yeah, 4 to 5 stories each building.
The concept plan has buildings pushed out to the perimeter. So there are buildings if you go on Hospital Road, there are buildings between West Border Road and Hospital Road proposed on the side of the boiler building and the nurses building.
Yep.
Those are 2-story buildings now. My guess is that that's where they're going to want to put 5 stories.
Correct.
Because that's where the views are. There's a wall of 5-story buildings is going to be looming over Fellsmere Pond with that plan. So it's not a matter of how much height they're proposing, it's also a matter of where that height is. And I would suggest, I went around to sort of look at 5-story buildings. What does a 5-story building feel like? I would suggest that anybody in this room, including the city councilors, go to the Sims Hospital site, which is a very similar development to what's being proposed at the Malden Hospital site. It's also actually done by the Jefferson Apartment Group, so it's 146 apartments in 5-story buildings and townhouses. Look at it, because it really drives home the point of what the density is that they're proposing for it and what an impact that would have on the pond.
Yep, fair point. All legitimate concerns. Absolutely. That's why we have this meeting. I want to hear your opinions on that. Whether or not that's visible from Fellsmere Pond, I'm not certain, but it's 4 to 5. Well, with the again, I'm not a proponent. I'm just telling you what information we have. And some of this, they might be able to shed more light, the developers, when they take the stage in the second hour. So it's an excellent point. I'm not going to deny that. Mark.
Thank you, Councillor. My name is Mark Bernard. I live on West Border Road. Some of you have seen me at these meetings for the past many years. I want to get back to the original intent of this meeting, and that is we are supposed to be deciding what we want, not reacting to what we're being proposed. That's why we're here without the developers. Now, I'm a direct abutter. I won't deny I have a very special interest in what goes up there. And to your point, yes, I was looking at a 5-story building just above me. But I want to bring up some points from here, okay? That said, there are a few points that need to be explained and clarified. And maybe Michelle, you know where I'm going with this one, will help me. The current vacant, abandoned former hospital is defined as a non-conforming use. That is, the property is zoned single family.
True.
Okay? 2, our city ordinance and the zoning are specific on vacant, non-conforming uses. In fact, section 700.1.5 states, any non-conforming building structure or use abandoned or not used for a period of 2 or more years shall thereafter be used only in conformance with the provisions of this ordinance. That means, my read, is that property is only to be single family.
Mark, if I can interject, yeah, there's no dispute as to that. You know, it was an allowable use as a hospital. That's expired. It's Residence A now, which is single-family homes. If we support this proposal, we'd be seeking a variance. And Councillor D'Angelo, I believe, was on the planning board that actually had some involvement in this back when the developer came in 2007 for assisted living. we would have to grant them a variance from Residence A. Right now, it's not approved.
Okay, well,
That's why they need us. They can't build as a matter of right.
But my third point, which is also in the ordinance, which says that section 700.1.6 of the ordinance goes further and states that non-conforming use shall, if once changed into a conforming use, i.e. single family, it cannot be changed back to a non-conforming use. So my read of this regulation is that it is a single family and therefore it will remain a single family. Folks, the zoning and the ordinances are our rules and statutes that we put in place in the city to make the city what we want it to be.
Yeah, Mark's absolutely right. Yeah, that's right. And back to what the mayor said, if we don't want this type of development, we don't have to grant them the permission they need to build up there. We don't. We could insist that it stay as is. You know, the only rub is, you know, we're kind of at the mercy of market conditions and who wants to make the massive investment called for to develop the site. But again, we can stick to our guns on this.
One final point on this, John, and that is that is right. But we should be in the driving seat. We're not supposed to be responding and reacting. We're supposed to be proactive and say, what we want on that hill is this. And then have the developers come to us and say, okay, we can work with that, this is what we're proposing. Now, I don't know why that's a problem, because we keep shopping this around for high-density development when the zoning, and nobody's argued my point, what I'm saying, the zoning says you cannot do that.
Yep.
In closing, off track here, guys, sorry. It is my hope, and I thank the mayor for having this meeting, because I hope that we can have a dialogue of the community to say, what is it that we want up there in the hill? Instead of being taken like we were, like we have been in the past, and do nothing but react. We have to tell the mayor and the city council what we want on that, and move towards getting to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Mark, very well said, and I just want to briefly interject, Councillor. It's David Gargazo, Councillor Lodge. I apologize for not being at your last meeting. I was actually over at a special meeting, similar issue, over with McFadden Manor over in Ward 5. So I was representing Councillor Spadafora and Councillor D over there. I couldn't be here. So I am so very pleased to see such a good group here and such positive, constructive dialogue going on here. This is great. And if we keep this up, you will, and we all will, get what you want up there. So that's a great thing. A couple different things, though, Councillor Matheson mentioned. I was actually on the planning board when the Deaconess property, we voted to give that a special permit. And I think that our vision at that time was, and they missed the market and subsequently it never ended up getting built, but I think our vision on that was, hey, let's do something for the whole city with this site. And I care very deeply that the Malden Hospital. I was born at Malden Hospital. My mother's cousin, and you know, so what's that making, my second cousin or whatever, delivered me up at the Malden Hospital. So I care deeply about Malden Hospital, as you do as well. And as Councillor at Large, my responsibility is to make sure that the entire city is taken care of. And I was thinking at the time, when we gave the special permit to Deaconess, that, hey, this will be an opportunity for people to continue to age in place in Malden and go into one of the townhouses, and then if they need the assisted living, and then if they need other discrete care as well. So I think while this proposal is very much different, I think some of those components are there as well. So I have met with the group, and I mean, I don't think anybody wants what's up there now, where it's dilapidated and it's just, you know, it's going nowhere, and we're at the mercy of Hallmark, which has not been a good neighborhood partner for us. So again, I'm very encouraged by the people here. Certainly, who's the next question?
Councillor.
Just very briefly, Councillor Spadafora had some information he wanted to add.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm singing a play right now. I hope everybody enjoyed their winter weather here. Sorry for the early start. You know, I think after the notice went out, we realized a little bit early, so if there is another meeting, we'll make sure we coordinate a later date. That was the idea of having the camera here so that people couldn't make it. We can tape it, and you can always remember what we say and they say. A couple things that I heard real quick that I want to first jump out, and maybe this meeting becomes real short. First of all, if anybody thinks that the council is in the pocket of the developer, they're sadly mistaken. Because we have not given any indications to the developer of anything but this is what we need to see from what the residents reacted last time. Councillor Matheson went down on his own. I went down on my own. I went down there twice. Once on the tour, and once with my family, and walked around and talked to people in the development. So I have no problem right now of calling the developer on the phone and saying to them they want single-family homes and we're not going to see anything else. But I will tell you, if somebody lives down the street, that's probably not going to happen. So we're going to have the same meeting in a couple months or a couple years when people complain that the building's going to come down. Because Councilor Matheson and myself, along with the mayor's office, have been suing Hallmark to take down the building. I personally don't think, and we've thought of every avenue, somebody's going to come in there and spend $10 million just to get the ground clean before they build a house. I don't think it's going to happen. And that's fine, that's fine. But the meeting is about what we want to see there, right? The problem is, there's no other plan that we have other than the one the developer gave us. There's no single-family housing plan. I've heard there's park plans out there, but there's no money right now. I mean, I don't see a revenue source. So if we want to end this meeting early, I can call the developer. And this, I mean, I'll be honest, I live down the street. What I want to see there is probably the hospital come back, realistically. But I have two concerns with this. One is, we do nothing, we wait, and we wait, which is fine. I have no problem waiting. But I will say something that I told a couple residents that came up, and this is not a threat. I'm just telling everybody here right now how this came up. As you know, the city of Malden is looking to move the police station and city hall. In the process, the mayor's office and the council, we've looked at almost every property in the city to move. This has been going on for months and years. But to the credit of the mayor's office and the council, we've been vigorous. We're going to help the state. They gave us a big check, and it looks like we're going to move. One of the proposed properties we looked to move to said to us, you're not going to buy it from us. We're going to put 40B units here. And for everybody to know what 40B units are, and this is not taken the wrong way, there is a percentage of low income, but also the density rules go out the window. And residential aid, to Mark's point, that's what it is right now, does not come in effect. They can come in here and lobby us because it's called the anti-snog rule. The reason why they put that in is because Winchester and all the good communities around us that have these very high standards said, you can't come here with that type of unit. So they created the 40B rule. So the developer, let me go back to the story, the developer, we went to look at the property when we went back and we said, we want to buy your property. And they said, it's worth this much money. We said, no, it's not. They said, yes, it is. We're going to put 40B here. We said, nope, we're not near the cap. They said, yes, you are. You're near the cap. So the cap is 10%. So based on some numbers, and I have somebody here from all of your development authority because it scared the bejesus out of all of us. This had nothing to do with the hospital. This came up before this even came through. We're probably right at, I'll let the gentleman speak, right at the 10% number. If we're not, we'll be there next year. 100 units will make or break a difference. How that works is, a developer will come in here, they can fight the city for a little while, but they have the ability to change the zoning up there. And my concern is, we're not going to have this discussion. And my other concern is, Paul Hammersley is not very happy in the city of Malden right now. We're suing them. Everybody knows what's going on with Parkers. The Middlesex District Attorney came in and said, it's not going through the merger. Councillor Matheson, myself, and the mayor's office sent a letter to him, which I told him last time. We tried to take it by own domain to get something done up there to spark something. It hasn't happened. At one point, they're going to sell this. And if there's a developer in here who's got a half a brain and an attorney, 40B is the perfect spot up there. So everybody wants to know the density, the city council will lose some control, both Medford and Malden. I'll be completely honest with my 3 kids. I live right across the street. The traffic is horrific. I'm with everybody. But I want everybody to know, we get past on this. I mean, I'm not saying I don't care. I do care. Would I like to see single family homes there? I told somebody last time. I tried to get Malden Catholic to buy that property 5 years ago. I thought it was a great location for a school. Maybe not now, I hear about the traffic concerns. But I try to look at every alternative up there. It's an eyesore up there. I just have a very, there's a knot in my stomach. If we let this go, and the developer like Avalon Bay finds out that's 40B, they're going to buy that, and the hospital's going to get their price. And then we're going to have to fight with the state, because we'll fight. I mean, like Councilor Matheson, I think we'll fight. Because it'll be the density issue.
Yeah, but I do want to get back to some questions and answers.
But I just want to, but the same token is, if everybody wants single-family houses, there's no need to have the developer come forward. Right?
Yeah, I did express to the developer that this is a lot of density, and apartments are not the most popular development choice. But for their taste, there is no incentive for them to buy and develop this property unless there are apartments as part of the mix. That's why on this question and answer form, and to Mark's point, we do want to drive this process. So that's why I also ask you what you want to see up here. But it does ask you if you have a stomach for apartments, and if so, how many apartments, how many cars? 40B is certainly another part of the discussion. But we do have limited time, so if anyone else has questions, we want to hear them.
We want to hear from as many people as we can.
Absolutely. Sir, up there. Ma'am, you have the microphone. Go ahead.
I'm Karen Steele. I'm on Fellsmere Road, right on the corner of Savin and Fellsmere. I am very much opposed to apartments. I think the density is an issue. I think the issue of the height and how it's going to appear, it's a very unique neighborhood here in Malden, and I think creating more apartments in this area is going to be a huge detriment to the neighborhood and to the community. I'm very concerned about the traffic issues. There are 2 streets going up there. If you're talking about 534 cars, and I think that's a low estimate. Trying to have those 2 streets carry all of those cars is going to create a huge problem. And I wouldn't be opposed to possibly condominiums if they were the low townhouse kind of condominiums along with a mix of single family. I think that would maintain the area and be a complement to the area. But I think adding apartments up into there is just going to have such a negative impact that as a personal homeowner, I would just have to say no.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Good points. I did emphasize that home ownership is preferable. I know this because homeowners obviously care about the community, care about the city, care about their property. They're typically less dense, fewer cars. So those are very legitimate concerns. And back to Councillor Spadafora's point, we did bring a resolve that the city acquire the property. It would be a massive undertaking. And I guess the idea would be that we'd create something like a Pamela Circle up there or something to that extent. But again, with all the development that the city is engaged in, I'm not so sure how viable that is. But you raised some legitimate concerns, and that's what we want to hear. Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Stephen. I live on Clifton Street. I'm not in a butter, so this is going to directly affect me. Mm-hmm. All right, but I am concerned about the quality of the community. One thing is, do you see, if there is development here, do you see that being affordable to young professionals? I'm talking people in their 20s, 30s, people who are making like $50,000, $60,000 some odd $1,000s. Do you see this being affordable to them? I have coworkers at the library, municipal employees, who can't afford to live in Malden, unfortunately. They would like to, but they can't because of basically all the new units that are going in are all luxury. It might be something, the only thing the market can support. It might be just market issues. But you see this as something that someone like that at a sort of a basically middle class could afford.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question for the developer. I think what they're going to tell you is with their mix, they're expecting young professionals are going to be able to come into their community because they're trying to offer something for everyone. I don't have that kind of construction expertise about their development, but that's going to be an excellent question for the second part of the format, which is coming shortly. We wanted to include the community with some private time as well as the developer, and that's why we start a little bit earlier today, and it's tough to accommodate everyone, but it's a legitimate question.
One thing I just want to send out to everyone is we all talk about we want something that's for the community and everything. We all talk about how Malden's important. Let's just say, for example, let's just forget about the Prop 205 sort of things. How much would we as a community willing to pay per person, for example, to say, just seize the property and develop it by Malden? This could mean, like, $100, $200, $300 per person, maybe more. But the point is, we have 60,000 people here. If it meant that my taxes would have to go up, they go up. I can accept that. I'm just saying, how much are we willing to pay out of pocket? There's some people who can't afford it. There's some people who, I'm going to be frank, are too cheap to afford it, or too cheap to pay. Like, look at him. But what are we going to do?
I think you're right. I mean, raising taxes is definitely a tough sell, but you're right. I mean, that would be one avenue to guaranteeing that Malden gets what Malden's looking for. So, what we want to know is whether or not we can live with the parameters that this group is giving us, and if we can't, back to Councillor Spadafora's point, we tell them thank you very much for your interest, but we have other ideas and we have other abilities to do something different. So, excellent point. Yes, ma'am.
From a student's point of view, since we've had so many school budget issues in the past, how are we going to handle all these families coming in? Like, how are we going to do spacing any more on the budget?
Right, and I know the developer from the last meeting is going to say that they're attracting empty nesters. In other words, individuals without kids that are going to burden the schools. I know the schools are full, and I know that 60+% of our budget every year is the schools. I deal with the budget every year. We're going to have another tough budget this year. So that's a very intelligent question. What does it mean to the schools? The former MRA director, Steve Wachowski, said, if we put in some higher-end homes, and I don't know exactly how we get there, but if we did, perhaps that would mean that these are individuals whose children are already emancipated or left the home, and certainly it wouldn't be so many homes that it would overburden the schools. But again, that's a different avenue and a whole different discussion, and how we get there is another piece of it. And I think you heard from Steve, the last gentleman, that that there would have to be some other measures in place. Who has the microphone? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Joan Sear. I'm actually from Medford. I'm on the other side of this development. I want to thank all the neighbors for inviting us tonight. We did not know about this, but we are direct abutters, and we will get all of the negative impacts and only some of the positives. We do go to Malden a lot. We go to Malden Center. We all see these people all the time.
Well, thanks for doing that.
Absolutely, love it. I can't wait for that monstrosity to come down so we can actually see the street from Malden Center. So that's cheesy. From our perspective, I've been in Cedar Road North, so right on the other side of Lund, since 1999. So the hospital, I think, was closed by then. We're starting.
I think that's very close. Yep.
Yes. So we used to get the cutter through. They come from 28. They want to avoid that Route 60 and 28 interchange, and they would cut through the Malden Hospital, cut out the back of the access, zoom up Lund Road, blow through the stop signs. We would call Medford all the time and say, do something about this traffic. Well, they're not going to put a police officer at every intersection. So our biggest concern, aside from all of the the other concerns that I've heard tonight, is traffic. I know that you mentioned traffic. Traffic is a big issue. Has anybody driven out there now with all the snow? It's like chicken on Murray Hill Road, It's like one in, one out, one in, one out, and it's really, really tough. I think on Savin Hill you said that there's traffic issues on that side. So there's only so many egresses into that space, and I can't conceive what 500 cars are going to bring to that traffic, but I have to imagine it's going to be, it's bad now, it's going to be worse.
There'd be some impact to you too.
It would be a lot of impact to us.
Yep.
So we have big issues with, the construction, where the construction truck's going to go. I don't think they can go on 28, so they're probably all going to be in Medford. So, and then after, when there are some residences there, we're going to get the traffic again. So, we had an animal killed up there because of speeders coming up through Fulton Heights to avoid. So that is our big issue. I know that's not for the developers, that's for all the folks, and I know the Medford folks and City Council are concerned as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I know the developer is looking at opening up that road, and there would be some impact to you. I say some. That's only because I don't know exactly what the impact's going to be on the Medford side. As far as Medford residents getting notice, I'm glad that you're aware of the meeting and that you attended. But 12 acres of this property is in Malden. The hospital structure is in Malden. We need to hear from our own residents as to whether or not this even has legs to go forward. And if it does, I'm going to speak for the mayor and the council that they're going to be working with Medford side as well, and their elected officials and your residents as well. So, yes,
Councillor, do we have time for one more question?
Sure do, yes.
At 6:30, they were supposed to come in. So
well, let them wait.
Editor of Malden Observer and Malden resident.
Oh no, here comes the hot ball.
Thank you. It's not too hard ball today. All right. Yes, it was interesting the bit about the possible 40B development. I'm not sure everyone in Malden has dealt with those lately. I got my start in north central Massachusetts about 10 years ago. Places like Groton, Harvard, lots of Chapter 40B developments out there. Basically, my understanding is if your community has less than 10% affordable housing, the developer can basically come in and disregard most of the local zoning for their project as long as they include at least 25% affordable housing units. That was the way it was then. I don't know if it's changed since then. It probably has. But my question is, you said Malden is around 10%, but I hear mention of a possible 40B coming in. Does Michelle or perhaps Debbie Burke know the percentage exactly if we are at or below, or if that would apply in this case?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to let Debbie speak to this, but try to be brief, Debbie. And before you do, I can say this: the threshold that we're sorry about the feedback. The threshold that we're looking at is Malden is at 10%. The threshold we're looking at is perhaps dipping below with all the downtown apartments that are coming online. That would give another developer the ability to perhaps build additional affordable housing up there, which isn't necessarily in itself a bad thing, but it might not be what this community is looking for at this time. So I'm going to let Ms. Burke speak to this.
I will be brief, and I'm going to just ask Noah Koretz from my office, who has had to do some significant research on this topic over the last week. He will be brief. I will tell you that as of today, you have to do an annual filing with the UCD, which is a state office that keeps the numbers for us. We are at 10.2% today.
Yeah, so if you want to know, of course, an MRA, if you want a little bit more specifics, we're at 10.2% today. That's based on the deed restricted affordable units in the city compared to total housing units. So the state gets the total housing units from the census, and we're not quite sure how often they updated it. These numbers are based on the 2010 census. So with all the apartments being developed downtown alone, and that's not accounting for the rest of the city, there's 793 units by our count in the pipeline. So by at least the next census, if it's not updated before then, we'll be under the 10% threshold. And like the gentleman before me just said, basically what that means is that it gives the developers the ability, instead of adhering to local zoning, to go directly to the Zoning Board of Appeals for what's called a comprehensive permit. The Zoning Board of Appeals can evaluate it, but if they put conditions on the development that the developer considers uneconomic, or if they reject the development, the developer can appeal to the state, and in that case, the local government loses control over the process. And like Councillor Spadafora said before, this could lead to significantly denser developments. It depends on the total number of housing units in the city, but right now, by current numbers in Malden, the maximum would be about 500 units for a development. And again, that could be up to 25% affordable, 75% market. So it could be, it all depends on the market conditions and when we go under that 40B threshold, but it is something to think about.
Yeah, and I'll add that's if and when we do dip below the 10%, and that projection has to do with the developments downtown. And even then, it only concerns property that's available. If the city had a plan in play, that wouldn't impact us. So that's not being presented to scare you. Yeah, we'll do a couple more questions, and then we'll turn it over to the Fellsmere Group.
I just
I just have one question, kind of last one from the Medford side. Before they said there was going to be no federal money, I'm assuming that excluded our veterans and Section 8 and everything else, but what happens if they don't fill these units? These are a lot of money. So I'm thinking of apartments who can afford to live in them, so they could be potentially vacant, be assisted living, that's costs are out of control, because the previous site, they wanted to have assisted living, and if I'm not, couldn't afford it. I don't know how the heck that fell through.
Well, the market crashed.
So, market crashed. So what if, and here we are now, people have no jobs. So what if we can't fill this development? Will they potentially, or could they say, or the city of Malden say, you know what, oh well, don't, come on in, everybody?
Yeah, fair question. I'm sure the developer is willing to work with us in restrictions, but I think it's a very fair concern. Any other questions? Perhaps some other residents here in Malden? We'll come back down to you, sir, after Councillor D'Arcangelo. I think he has someone in mind over here. Yeah, we'll have to try to be brief because we do have a schedule to keep. And I just want to let you know, I mean, the purpose of this, back to Mark Renard's point, we want to hear from you so that we can stay in the driver's seat. If you've got some strong opinions, here's your chance to write them down. Trust me on this. We're going to take this to heart. You can leave them in that box on your way out if I don't have the microphone to give you that opportunity or that information now. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Mike, it's a little Pleasant Street. Traffic is a constant refrain for the audience here. When you go to the current proposed developer's site, the developer said flat out, we were asked for traffic stats, a traffic analysis, and we don't see that we are ready to do that. We don't have the resources, or we don't think we need to do that. I think it's incumbent on the city and our residents to require some significant pre-development traffic analysis and to address and to show us what we're really doing here.
Yeah, amen. If we're going forward, I think that's definitely something to consider. Yeah.
Okay, and the second issue that I would raise is how this site looks and feels in the geography that it's going to develop is really, really important. And so, I think we also need to press the developer and also look to city resources, if we can muster them here, to look at modeling how the site will work, depend upon the alternatives that citizens identify. For example, setback of any units that are higher than a couple of stories. How to ideally site that for maximum view shed, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel.
Right, and we did hear that viewpoint just a little while ago, and you're going to see the drawings that the developer has brought in, and they're going to be able to shed some more light on that. Yes, sir. And then I'm going to come down here because this gentleman's been waiting. So go ahead.
Bristol Pine Street. The mayor mentioned that the concern at first was diversity in traffic, but then the proposal is 375 units with an estimated 534 cars, which seems to be the opposite of density in traffic, or the opposite of what they want. And then the point to the 40B is a concern, but shouldn't we look at trying to stay under the 10%, above the 10%, so that this potentially doesn't happen?
Well, right, and there's different affordable housing systems all around the city, exclusive of Malden Hospital, absolutely.
And then my last point is just with the option of the open space, we should just look and see what kind of potential we have with getting state funding, federal funding, brownfielding, whatever we can to potentially do something of that nature. I mean, it's a really great site.
Yeah.
It's a nice view. It's an extension of Fellsmere Pond. It'd be it's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we are looking for the best use. Yeah, absolutely. Down here.
My name is Willie. I live on Murray Hill Road, and I have a question about the 40B project you're talking about. The people who would come in and take over to do that, would they be responsible for paying the fee for taking down Malden Hospital? Because if they are, isn't it highly unlikely that you pay $5 to $6 million just to take it down and then put 25% of 40B people in?
I think you're right.
No, well, hold on. I want to answer that because here's my...
But while the councillor answers it, Councillor D'Arcangelo.
No, and this is not, let me back up. The 40B issue is, right now, the only development that the council, myself, and John have seen is this one development. We've seen nothing else that's come forward through the hospital and said, we want to put something there, okay? And if we feel like at the end of this meeting before the 7 o'clock, if we want to stop and wait because there's nothing else, that's fine. We can wait. I'm just letting everybody know, those units that we're talking about, other than maybe, I think, 200 of them, they're definite. They're coming on board. If I can buy that property and put 500 units in, I can spend more money on that property. And affordable is different by every city. What we're talking about here is less units. That ability, so the hospital can get a bigger bang for their buck because now they can sell for 500 units.
But there are so many towns in this state. They're under 10%.
Listen, I'm with you. That's why I am 100% with you. I feel like Malden has had their fair share. I completely agree with you. And the only reason why I bring this up is because this came up in another development, which I was shocked, and I said, there's no way we're under 10. There's no way. And that person was right. They hired an attorney to show us that. And that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem. It will probably happen next year. We'll go under that number. And if it goes under that number, I put this in everybody's brain. If I'm a hospital, and me and the council and the city, because we have to make a decision, if we don't go forward, we have to get that building down. We have to force it, because that is an eyesore on the community, both on the Malden side and the Medford side. And my biggest fear is, you have one of these fires in there, we send a fireman in there, and they're not there and they die. Because there's a big vacant building, the fire department doesn't go in there, the sprinkler system doesn't work anymore, it's condemned. They're going to want to sell that property off their balance sheet. It's been 15 years. They're looking for the biggest bang for their buck. And the only reason why I believe they're working with this one developer is because we listened to their call, to some degree, because the first time we didn't take it. The second thing is, they're trying to merge right now parks. We sent a letter to the state scolding them. So I think what they're trying to do is play, okay, we're going to help them all it out so we can do it. The merger might not happen, which I don't care. If this pulls off, which is fine, I think they're going to still penalty. They're going to try to hold it. They're going to have to. Because at the end of the day, the city doesn't own it. And we don't own it. They own it. And they're going to want to get some value to their shareholders. And if it was between this and housing, I'd go with the single-family homes. But my concern is, I get single-family homes and I'm fine with that, but then we talk about 400 cars. We put 200 single-family homes, you're going to have 400 cars. So it's a density issue of traffic. No matter what they put there to some degree, we will have traffic. That's the concern, too. And I'm with you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. We have time for one more. Before we do, I want to recognize that we are joined by State Representative Paul Donato in the room. Thank you for coming, Paul. Yeah, thank you. Paul represents parts of Malden and Medford, so it's great that he's here. We do have time for one more question, and 40B is something to keep in mind. I don't think it should dominate the discussion. It's an if and when point in time. As far as the suit that we're engaged in with Hallmark Health, yeah, this is a nonprofit entity. They carry $16 million in debt on this property, so they're looking for the biggest recovery they can get in the transaction. They actually sued the city of Malden. We went up, I went up there with inspectional services, fire department, building inspector, wire inspector, health inspector. We went through the building top to bottom. There is a number of safety issues up there, life safety issues like lack of a fire suppression system. So we have demanded of them to make the building safe. That's a city's obligation to its residents. They sued us in the Middlesex Superior Court to get relief from that demand notice. I think that affords them time to market the property. That case is, it's right now in a kind of a static state while they've told the judge that, we have a developer that's talking to the city. So for now, let's see if this thing can organically go its course. But that suit is in play, and we are following up on that on behalf of the residents for safety concerns. Yes, sir, we're going to take your question, but we do need to get the developers.
Very quick. Jim Moriarty, I'm on the Medford side, as an abutter. The Malden Hospital, when that was up there, was a pretty busy enterprise with a lot of traffic. I think one of the questions is, how does the traffic that the Malden Hospital generated compare with this development? And if you look at Lawrence Memorial Hospital, they don't even have enough parking where they are and can't handle all the cars. They're shuttling people from the Malden Hospital, as is Winchester Hospital. So hospitals have a ton of traffic.
Right.
So is it possible that even this development would produce less traffic than the Malden Hospital produced?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of space and time that has occurred since that was a hospital, 15 years. So that history isn't as relevant today because, you know, I can tell you that, you know, I grew up in a different part of Ward 3. I bought my home near the hospital now. So my time in my current home has happened since the hospital's closed. I can say that's true for a lot of residents. So if you've lived here for 15 years and you're used to a certain level of traffic that has nothing to do with the hospital, I'm not so sure that's as relevant today.
I've been there for 43 years. And I remember the hospital being there and the traffic was probably less thin than it is now.
Right, so your situation might be different than someone else's, but you know, we got to look at, you know, what we're used to now and where we're going to be going forward. So with that being said, I know there are a couple more hands, but bear in mind the meeting's not over. We're going to let the developer come in. We did schedule a time with them to update their proposal with everybody. Councillor Spadafora is going to introduce them. And I'm sure some of your questions can be answered by them as well. And this is only the beginning of a process. I mean, and again, if you have different ideas, you want to explore acquiring the property on the city side, you want to explore something else, we want to hear from you, and that's why we created this. I really want to be the best representative I can be, and I know that's true for these councilors and this mayor. So we definitely want to hear from you. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Spadafora. You can introduce the Fellsmere Group. And again, when you're done with that form, you can put it right there in the box with the pen, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Matheson. Before we bring him in, there's some people that I actually forgot to introduce, some other dignitaries here. I know that Councilor, and if I screw up your name, please, I apologize. Councilor Brenda Luongo from City of Medford is here. Is Brenda here? Councilor, I'm sorry. Blame bad handwriting. Is it Lauren Dorenzo, Director of Community Development in Medford, Representative Mayor McGlynn's office is here? Is that right? And then I know State Representative Trino is up there on the right with a red tie. And to his right, my left, is Councilor from Ward 5, School Committee member from Ward 5, Adam Weldi, representing the city. So I appreciate everybody coming out. And I meant what I said going forward. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I think at one point we should just decide as a community. I mean, I think we've heard it loud and clear again today. If we wanted to stand the course and say no, I think we make the decision here. I don't think it's worth anybody else's time to come here until we have another plan. And we'll just wait till another one appears before the city council or the mayor's office. But if you feel like it's at least worth going forward, we could probably do one more meeting, but I just want to say at one point, I think the developer, and be fair to them, they're going to want to get some sense. And what I think is a great idea was brought up is we should probably, we even asked them, and I said this in the last meeting, we haven't asked them to do any studies simply because it costs money. And it would be unfair to them to ask them to spend thousands of dollars if we just said no. I mean, now, if we get those numbers back and they reflect something different or an alternative, it's always worth getting more information. So I just wanted to tee that up because I think it was a great idea. Let's figure out traffic patterns, routes of entry, all that good stuff, height. That is all as far as... You have a question, Councilor?
Yeah, when you're done.
Okay. That is all simply just a drawing right now. And I know the developers here, I'm going to let Councilor Matheson speak real quick. And but, you know, some great questions about height. I've even had a resident ask me about, you know, sunlight. They do studies. If my home is near them, like Mark's house, well, they call it a shadow study. We'll take all the light out of my backyard. So things like that we haven't got into yet. And I think it's great for the developer to be here. We can ask those questions and then decide again as a community, you know, the next path. But all that data point, we haven't asked. And I think the next step is to start asking for that information. Councilor Matheson?
Yeah, very brief.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Very briefly, I know one useful piece of information is a show of hands. It gives us a visible way to know, you know, where we stand right now. And I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do this after you hear from the developer. We've given you some additional information over the last meeting. Who at this point is receptive to hearing more in light of the mix of residential units that we've heard from the Fellsmere group. If you're in favor of hearing more. Okay, I'm seeing about 40%. If you're reluctant to go forward with this study based on what you see now, let's see those hands. Okay, pretty even. All right, so at this point, we're going to turn it over to the Fellsmere group, and we'll close with another show of hands, and we're going to try to involve you even more in the process. So, thank you.
Thank you. Before I bring up the developer again, I want to just run the meeting, I think, the same way last time. Worked great. I'll moderate for questions. I'll answer what I think from the city side. If there's any questions for the city of Medford, I'd like the city of Medford, if they have any, if you want to jump in and answer those questions related to your side. I won't speak for them since they're here. We have 2 state dignitaries here, which I think is great if there are any questions like that. I'm going to try to be fair and move around the room for questions, get everybody to answer at least once. If we have time, we go back to 2. Fair enough. I have 2 microphones if we need mics, and we're on TV, so if we get any questions, we can always go back and look at them. One of the ideas that came up, and we were going to do it last time, but unfortunately there just wasn't enough information, was we're writing all the questions down. We are recording this. The mayor's office is going to put it on the city website, the city of Malden. We'll see what we can do for the city of Medford if they need that data, if they want it for their side. All the questions, frequently asked questions, we're going to I think the mayor's office gave us the okay. We'll develop a section on the website if we move forward with all the FAQs, so that way everybody can go there and see that as an area for communication. Fair enough? So I'd like to bring up Tony Green, representing the development. And Tony, you coming up with anybody else or just yourself? Bill, you going to come up too? Yep, Bill's going to come up.
Take a microphone for questions.
Yeah. You got a cue? Yep, just not on, so there's a speaker. You want to just introduce yourself again? You got anything you need? You got any proposals and everything? We got some slides. Okay, you got the slides. Yeah, we're going to bring the screen down. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony Green, and he'll go through. Tony?
Thank you. Thank you, residents and neighbors of Malden Hospital, for inviting us to come talk to you again. And thank you, Mayor Christenson, Council President Matheson, Councillors Spadafora, DeMaria and D'Arcangelo, as well as other officials who are here, either from Malden or Medford or the state. I don't know how many people were here in the November 19th meeting, and how many were not. Okay, so, and what I don't, should I quickly go through what we did then, just so that everybody is on the same page?
We'll try to move this along. We know everybody's got children,
right.
Husbands and wives, so we'll try to move along.
We'll see if I can give the abbreviated version.
Yeah, we're going to.
Yep. So we're here for 2 reasons. We're here to describe our proposal, but we're also here to listen.
Can everybody see that? I'll try to find the lights. Can everybody see that? Is that bright enough?
And obviously, this is a meeting in anticipation of a public process with future public hearings. Thank you. And it's an opportunity to meet neighbors as well as to hear comments and critiques of the plan we're about to show you. Very quickly, it's Bill Kress, Charlie Coolidge, I'm Tony Green. Also with us here, Kendra Hallowell from Icon Architects, Tim McGivern from Yeech Engineering, and John Judge from Pine Hills, and Mike Skeldon on the computer. So, if you go to the next slide, Mike, we'll quickly go through just a moment of wrong button. So a little bio on the 3 of us, but you can look that up on the website. I don't think we need to really spend time on that now. And let's go right to the next plan. You can see Fellsmere Pond right there. And the site right there. Oh my, that's great. And you can see how the pattern in the green space that exists is very different than the rest of the city. And the site goes all the way from Grover Road, where the cursor is, all the way down to West Border Road. And that the concept of our plan is what would happen if we could do all of the development that we're proposing where the existing buildings and parking are today, and leave that wooded buffer on the slope and that surrounds the entire site in the state that it is today, as it exists today. Okay. This one's better?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did we see? We see the pond. We saw that urban pattern, lots more green space, and something that's very different than exists normally. It's a hilltop with views and with trees. We want to preserve that in order to create value on the hill for both ourselves and for our neighbors. Existing conditions is the next slide, Mike. So you can see the site here, the buildings, and the parking behind. And then how about if you just trace the city limit line that runs right through there, then comes down around the nursing home and goes out, and then just the streets for where the site runs from. So start at go back one, Mike. West border, go below, all the way down. There we go. West border, all the way down. Then there's this funny little piece that sticks out behind the Malden Health Center, which is not part of this. Then it runs up. Then there's another wedge that sticks out with that green space and some parking. Then it runs up along the city line all the way to Grover. Runs all the way down Grover to Murray Hill. Runs down Murray Hill, past Hospital Road, back to where we started near West Border. There is an existing bus stop at the front door of the hospital, and we would hope to keep that bus there. One of the ways that we found the advantageous nature of the site was actually walking through the existing building. And one of the surprising things is, even though that building is substantially taller than our tallest building would be, it's actually sort of hard to see it from various abutting neighbors, and that vegetation has really grown up around it, creating a lot of privacy. The concept of an urban site with woods and views, if we can build compactly, is not something that's allowed by current zoning. But we looked at what we've done down at Pine Hills, where we emphasize view, using grade, and orientation to empty nesters, and offering multiple housing choices as a way to create a different kind of community. And I'm going to quickly just run through 4 slides that give you an example of each of the 4 housing choices. So the first one is assisted living. Assisted living has 3 components. There's an independent living component, an assisted living component, and a memory care component. There are common areas that each apartment utilizes. There are common meals that are served. And this would be an entity that's a business that we would not run, but that we would find another entity to run that, because it is a very specialized business. The second use are apartments. The pictures in this slide here are all of Oak Grove Village. We've actually hired the same architecture firm that designed Oak Grove Village, and we are looking to create a rental neighborhood. It's actually our site is about the same size as Oak Grove Village, but Oak Grove Village has 550 apartments plus the commercial. We're suggesting something substantially smaller than that. The third housing type is condominium. And these, on the upper left, is a townhouse-style condominium designed by Icon. To the right are townhouses that are built at Pine Hills. And then on the lower left is apartment-style housing that is also built at Pine Hills. And then the fourth housing type are cottages. And all of these cottages exist at Pine Hills and range in size from about 1,600 feet to about 2,500 feet in size. They're single-family homes that have front porches. They sit on narrow streets that have a more community outlook. So those are the 4 housing types that we think fit well in this neighborhood. And one of the advantages of trying to attract 4 different markets is that allows us to really build the entire site except for the single-family housing all at once. So that is a much more compressed time frame for building than it would be if we were trying to build all of one type. So if we go to the next slide, that's going to show us back to existing. So just to get a look at that, and then this is the plan we showed on November 19th. And how we're fitting it in the spaces where there already are existing buildings or parking. Now the big changes in the things that are the same. What's the same is that we have the same tree buffer and open space. We have the same access to the bus and shuttle, although we've actually figured out if we go to the next plan, we figured out how to make the bus turnaround fit within the existing pavement and parking off of Hospital Road so it could still stay there. We still have an orientation to empty nesters and their tendency to have substantially 1/4 to 1/3 of the trip generation of standard single-family homes. And we still have the same narrow street that runs through here. That street is only 18 feet wide. We have met with the fire chief in Malden, and he thinks that that street is adequate for his facility, and that's about 1,150 feet of additional street that someone would have to drive in order to wind through there, and there's parking on both sides to make it unattractive to be an area that one might cut through. Here are the differences for this plan versus the plan that we showed on November 19th. There is no change in the number of assisted living apartments. There are still 80. There is a change in the remaining 318. There were 275 apartments in the first plan that we've removed building. If you can point where that building was removed, right there. There are 35 fewer apartment homes. 35 fewer apartment homes, that brings the number down to 240. There are 6 additional condominiums, so condominiums went from 26 to 32. And there are 6 additional single-family homes, cottages, that went from 17 to 23. So that the new total of other than assisted living is 295, and the total is 375. In addition, there was some discussion when we were last here about what might happen to the area where the birdhouse was torn down. That's the house that existed at the intersection of Hospital Road and Murray Hill Road. The idea that there would be a park here, that it would be passive recreation, but that there'd also be some recognition of the hospital and its long service to the area in that park. I don't know exactly what that will be. Hallmark has said that they do have quite a number of plaques and other things that we might be able to make use of in creating that kind of space. And think it appropriate that there be some recognition in that open space of the former use should we be successful in creating this neighborhood. And then the next item is that we spent quite a bit of time as we went meeting various staff members of actually both cities, both Medford and Malden. And we have come to an understanding not how our mitigation dollars would be spent, but at least trying to create a calculation that would give us some guidance or give you some guidance as we go through the process. And we are committing to spending $2,000 per apartment permit. And so in there are 240 apartments in today's plan. That would be a $480,000 commitment. And part of the permitting process will be to decide how to direct those dollars, whether it's towards traffic, towards the park down at Fellsmere, toward affordable housing, or whatever other issues come up as we go through that very public permitting process to create zoning change. maybe just a short list of some of the places we've been between meetings. Malden Fire Department, Malden Planning Department, Medford Department Heads, affordable housing through the Senior Center, met with the unions. We spent some time talking to Malden Historic, and then spent quite a bit of time with some lawyers. One of the questions that was asked at the last meeting was about the gifting of land to the hospital. Bill, you actually are the expert here, so how about if you describe what that was?
Originally, the hospital, the land upon which the hospital existed was donated to the town for a hospital use, to the hospital. And they built the hospital, and in a sense it was deed restricted that way. What's happened, and that happened in 1907, what happened over the years is the other parcels, not just this parcel, but other parcels, had similar deed restrictions, and the Massachusetts legislature voted 2 laws suggesting that unless that is constantly updated every 30 years by the heirs, that right disappears. And since 1907, it's never been updated. There's nothing in the registry to say that it continues as a hospital donation. And accordingly, it is no longer under the same deed restriction that existed then.
So to wrap up before we open it for questions, there's one, for us, there's no substitute for actually being on the site. And whether it's with an individual or with a group of individuals, we are open to meet with anyone who has an interest in taking the time to walk with us, to take you and explain the plan so that you can see on the ground what we're talking about. And we are happy to do that. I have business cards with my phone number, and we're available to do that, whether singly or in a group. And similarly, many of the buildings or types of buildings that we are talking about here exist down at Pine Hills. And in fact, the cottages are right across the street from the apartments. And you could actually see them in the flesh as opposed to in a picture. And for anyone who would like to make that kind of tour, we're available for that as well. And that can be one-on-one or in a group or whatever makes you comfortable. So with that, it's the quickest summary I could come up with, and we're ready to hear from you.
So I see some questions. I'm going to jump into the gentleman with the hat, and then I'll go to the gentleman with the green, and we're going to go around one at a time. So if I skip over these, because I already asked questions, so sure right there. Just you say your name?
It's John Hancock.
John Hancock.
Yes.
First member of Massachusetts.
Now, all the renderings that you've shown, none of them are 5 stories high. And are there any properties in Pine Hills that are 5 stories high?
We, at Pine Hills, we have buildings that are 4 and 4.5 stories high. But we do not have something that is a full 5 stories.
And where are the garage parking spaces going to be located? I
should have said that. All of the, one of the ways that we're able to accomplish restricting our building to the area where the existing parking and hospital is that we are parking under all of the buildings. And we're doing that actually by building the parking in the basement of the existing building or on grade, or in places where there's some fill. There are some places that are filled, trying to avoid blasting if at all possible.
And are the buildings that are closest to Belgium and Pond, are those 5 stories high?
No, those are 3. And those are essentially, so the nurses building that is there actually is a 2-story building with a little bit more than that, with a basement. So we'd be 1 story taller than that, but we're actually, the nurses building has a wing that comes towards the pond, and we're not doing that.
Sir in the green, and then I'll come down to you, ma'am. I'm behind everybody, so I'm just going to pass the mic on.
Thank you for coming. We've come because you want to hear from the community and what the community feels. I think it'd be good for you to know that before you were allowed in, there was a show of hands as to how many people wanted to go forward with their it was only about half. And that is itself not an accurate figure, because there are dozens of people that I'm aware of who simply couldn't come to this meeting, so you're not hearing from the full community because it was a schedule where working people can't come. But I want to tell you why the negative. Malden needs, and then your needs, don't match real well. Malden doesn't need more apartments. Malden people don't need this kind of assisted living, which is $5,000 to $7,000 a month. We can't afford that here. Malden doesn't need that downrush of 500 cars of traffic, because we've already got a traffic nightmare at rush hour here. What Malden needs is green space, open space, recreational space. We have the next to the bottom of the ratio of open space to developed space of all the towns around here. So there's a need and a hunger for more of that here, that if we're allowed to have another community meeting, and I hope we will, at a time when the community can really come, what you'll hear is a need for picnic areas, a performance center, dog walks, outdoor recreation. There's a need for all of that. And the people that, after that last meeting, there was a lot of strong feeling about not going forward with something massive like this, which really takes the gem of Bellsmere Pond. This property is like the natural completion of that, and it goes to private interest rather than the interests of the town. We need another option, and I don't know whether you would be willing to cut back and make room for all these other needs. You've done it in what looks to me like a token way, and I was down at the pond, and I looked up through the existing tree buffer. It's not a buffer. The hospital is quite visible except during leaf season, and the same would be true for what you're doing there. So my hope is that you or another developer could listen to needs like that and do a third of what you're talking about, so that the real benefactors are not private interests, but the interests of the people of Malden.
I've got someone right here.
My name is Tom McNeely, and I'm a butter on Willow Road behind on the Medford side. How are you going to exit and enter the hospital through the heights of the Medford side of your project? Because already, my street is about 9 feet wide, there's no sidewalk. I've got delivery trucks, I've got traffic up and down the street all day long, and I can't even get my grandkids out in front of the house.
So, everybody heard the question, right? We're showing, there we go. Oh, I had it. There it is. That's the, you want to do that, Bill, so I can get to the mic? That's the extension of Lund Road, which is there today. And being aware of the issue, we're trying to make sure that there's no easy way for someone to think about that as a shortcut, as one could do today if it were open, where you came into the parking lot and then cut right through the hospital and came out to Hospital Road. Instead, you've got to go over 1,100 feet of road, 2/5 of a mile, over 2/5 of a mile of, over a fifth of a mile, excuse me, of road that is 18 feet wide with parking on both sides. So it is not convenient to be a shortcut. Additionally, the garages from all the buildings, except, they all enter out on either Hospital Road or at the intersection of Hospital Road and our new road. And it's only the garage from the condominium building and part of one apartment building that come out on our new road.
So what's going to come out on the Medford side?
Well, it's not a shortcut for anybody who's heading.
Not a shortcut. Is there a way to get from your project out to the back of the road, Grover Road, up to the...
That's what that shows, yes. And we know that that's an issue to be...
The street's 9 feet wide. How is 500 cars going to, even if you cut that into a third, going to maneuver down my street to get out towards the post in the morning.
The layout of the street is actually substantially wider than the street and the quality of its pavement. But I don't know what the final answer is to how traffic will go. I know that that's an issue. We also have, there are 5 homes of the cottages that are in Medford, and it would seem a little odd if they couldn't get to Medford. But we also think that building the cottages as we're showing them where the existing parking lot is makes a lot more sense than trying to do lots that come off of Grover Road, because then we're putting them right in the middle of the buffer.
Well, the buffer's the buffer, but you're still not answering the question about all those cars are going down the 9-foot wide road.
Well, first of all, it's only someone who wants to either go through that neighborhood or think...
People don't want to go through that neighborhood. How are they going down my street?
Anybody who's heading into town isn't going that way.
They did for years.
I just want, sorry, I don't know if those other people want to go second.
Well, I haven't had my question answered.
We know that that's an issue that has to be discussed.
Well, I mean, I want to know what the issue is. I want to know what I've been answered.
Well, there has to at least be some access. So then the question is, how to make it work? What's the best way to do it?
Why does there need to be access?
At a minimum, there has to be at least emergency access.
They go around. They go down Grove Road around.
There's no access now.
There was never any access to the hospital except for emergency vehicles.
Well, there has to at least be that.
They go around. Emergency vehicles.
You're not answering our questions.
I think I am. The plan as it's shown does show a road connection, and we know that that's a controversial issue, and we know that through the permitting process we're going to have to spend some time either satisfying some people or figuring out how to create an emergency access that works.
Yes. Yeah, I want to ask more specific questions about the height, and I also want to ask a question about the traffic. So first about the height. I would like you to go, I can see the cottages, and I assume they're 2 stories high. But for every other building there, I would like you to go and point to the building and tell us how tall that's going to be.
You're going to point to the side and talk off the mic. So start with the assisted living. Yep. The assisted living is a 2- and 3-story building. The condominiums are a 4-story building. That apartment building is a 4-story building. That is 3, 3, 4 with a piece of 5.
And where's the piece of 5?
In the middle.
In the middle, okay. Okay. And in terms of the traffic that goes there, I assume that the traffic study that you do is going to assume that Savin Street will not be widened. Those streets cannot be widened in the area. I mean, the solution to the traffic problem can't be we're going to make thoroughfares up there to get to that location. That's actually a point I'm making. But I want to make sure you agree.
What I do know is that the amount of traffic that we generate is substantially less than the hospital generated when it was open. Now, it's more than is there today because the hospital's been closed for a long time. But that's going to be our burden to prove.
Well, I got 2 people in line. I see in the front row your red shirt. I'll be right down one more. You all set?
Hi, I want to make this won't be popular, but I'd be all for actually maybe even ditching single housing, and I'm not up with the assisted living, whatever. And so keep the density in bigger buildings and make more open space and make it open so that current residents can still feel that it's a comfortable place for them to go, as opposed to right now it looks like a gated community. And make it so it's still open to the residents, current Malden residents, being able to see the view that's there.
Hi, just a couple of things. one, I'd like to get some web addresses to look at your other projects.
Yes.
And even this concept plan. And secondly, what you've presented so far is 4 different types of living facilities. Are there price ranges that have been laid out for these? Like the price of the home, the price of the condos, the price of the assisted living, or the regular apartments?
Okay. We've done some market research and can help you with some of that. For assisted living, it's not our project, and I can't tell you what those rates are. For apartments, we think that a 2-bedroom apartment is in the $2,500 a month range to start. And they're basically 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, so the ones are less. For the condominiums, we would hope that those are going to start in the high 3s and get into the 4s. And for the cottages, we want those to start in the 4s, and if we're successful, we'd love to see them get into the 5s. Web addresses. For Pine Hills, www.pinehills.com. And for Fellsmere Housing Group, www.fellsmerehousing.com.
And also there's bios.
And there's bios on us on the Fellsmere site.
As well as web links to other projects.
And web links to other projects.
Good evening, I'm Eric Henry on Wiley Street here in Malden. Just a quick question. It seems that you've done your due diligence with regards to the deedship of the site, and so I was just curious. In the last poll in November, you said that the nurses building would remain the same. So will that still be the case, or are you going to try to develop that site as well?
No, we're not. We are not purchasing the land or the building where the nursing home is. It's a separate entity that has a long-term control of that site. And the Malden Health Center also is not part of this purchase and stays being operated by Hallmark.
Hi, my name is Mike Dyke, on the side of the street. I was wondering, you showed some examples of similar developments you've done, some perhaps even greater impacts or greater numbers of units. How have the property values for the residents surrounding those similar developments been impacted by what you've built?
Pine Hills is really the where I have spent the bulk of my time for the past 15 years or so. The average home price at Pine Hills is substantially higher than the average home price in the town of Plymouth. And actually, Pine Hills is now the largest taxpayer in the town of Plymouth. Home price roughly $100,000, even a little bit more than that, higher than the average price in the town of Plymouth today.
And I can talk about
yeah.
And a project that we did in Cambridge, which was called the Albemarle Apartments, about 6 years ago. All of those properties, it was 55 condominiums, and every one of them has gone up around 25% since then. The area around it has also gone up in Cambridge.
At Pine Hills, the same. I mean, people advertise their proximity to Pine Hills when they're outside.
Karen Steele, Fellsmere Road.
Oh, thanks.
As a follow-up to the gentleman earlier, are you considering at all lessening the number of apartments and whether they be condominiums that are maybe 2 or 3 stories or single-family homes? Is that something that you would consider moving forward?
I think I would answer the question this way. Obviously, in a permitting process, some small number of change is possible. If you were to ask me today whether I would choose, if we were going to reduce 6, I would reduce 6 condominiums before I would reduce 6 apartments, because the certainty of that market is much less. There's much greater risk, and the certainty of the other market is much less. So that would be economically for us, that's the prudent way to think about it. We know that part of the process is, people are concerned about exactly how many. We think that how is more important than how many, but there's some, that's a discussion that clearly has to be had.
I think part of the question, relates to the fact that this is a very residential neighborhood where other apartments have gone in Malden. It has been more apartment friendly. This is very residential, and I think there's a lot of pushback from the neighborhood to have apartments in what has been a residential neighborhood for 100 years. And maybe that's, not the politically correct thing to say, but I think that's a big concern for a lot of the people there.
I think we clearly understand that, and these are not your average bare apartments. I don't think there are so many places where one could lease an apartment that has a view of downtown, and the view from that hill is nothing short of spectacular. So we think it's different than the average bare.
I have a follow-up question. I'm Jan, again, and I live right down the road from Karen. But in terms of apartments, I understand that the reason for your preference for apartments over condominiums is because of the current market right now. But when I was doing research of other developments in the area, sort of in preparation for this, I looked at the development that went up on Sims Hospital site. I don't know how familiar you are with that. You should take a look at it because it's not that dissimilar from Malden. But one of the things that the developer said there, and I don't know whether they're going to follow through on this, is that they are building apartments with the prospect of converting them at some later date if the market changes.
We feel exactly the same way.
Okay, so then the question becomes, would you be willing, to consider, and I don't expect an answer right now, but to consider some kind of a plan with that. It's not really fair to have people move in and then kick them out and say, oh, the market's better, bye. But where that's part of the plan, where it's maybe not an ownership situation now, but the plan is to move to ownership.
I think for us, being forthright and truthful, it's going to start out as apartments, and they could stay apartments. If we're fortunate enough that we create a market that's bigger than, what the statistics would anticipate, we're certainly going to take advantage of it.
And we want ownership.
We want that. It'd be great, but the plan that we have is to start with apartments.
And just like Simpson, I'm very familiar with it. The sites are very similar, and they are doing the same thing. These days, the way the market is coming back, the economic engine that kind of drives these projects are the residential apartments. And the condominium is coming back now, but it's not back yet. It's a lot better than it was 5 years ago. So there's reason to be optimistic.
Questions?
What if you can't build the apartments?
We're prepared to build the apartments, assuming we get the zoning.
No, build the apartments.
We'll be able to fill the apartments. We have the newest apartments, the nicest apartments. We may not get the perfect rent that we want, but we'll be able to fill them with the best residents in Malden.
Do you the mic, sir? Do you the mic? Yeah, first, sir. Right.
Now, how many people do you think will end up in that spot of land there when it's done?
Well, there are 80 assisted living. Those, generally speaking, are 1 or 2 residents per apartment. The average is under 1.5 generally. The conventional apartments actually come in at pretty much the same ratio, particularly when they're 1 and 2 bedrooms. And for sale condominiums tend to be something slightly higher than that, but under 2. and the single-family homes, one would expect 2.
Has anyone been doing this math now? Do we got a figure?
It's about 550.
That little plot of land is going to support 550 people, right? That's what you're saying? Now look at all the houses around the plot of land.
Yes.
I don't know if I get 550 people out of the house. I mean, that's a lot of people that we thrown on Olmsted Park. That's Frederick Law Olmsted. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to support that influx of people. That area. I'm not talking cars, I'm talking a lot of people going. It's just something to think about.
I'm not sure if you can verbally do this, but if I'm driving up Murray Hill Road, or I'm standing on the sidewalk of Murray Hill Road, that's a very, very steep embankment going up. So depending on so what I'm interested in is, what are those buildings going to look like? If you live across the street on Murray Hill Road, or you're walking up the street with a large embankment going up, if the building is set back a little bit, am I going to see the roofs of the buildings? Am I going to see the top floor of the building? I think some of the buildings you're definitely not going to see, because you've got a big embankment. Can you verbally give a visual?
I'll try and do that. So I think there are 2 places that you can think about this. As you're coming up Murray Hill Road, there is that large embankment that sits behind the single-family house that's on the corner of West Border and Murray Hill. And the ground goes up quite substantially and actually goes back down to Hospital Road. And the existing buildings of the hospital are actually a little taller than the tallest part of what we're building. So it's a pretty good proxy. We're generally speaking going to be a little bit less than what's there, and we're pretty close to the same footprint, except for the condominium building, which goes off the end of the parking lot. So that if you follow the line of the existing main buildings, or at the same time, if you follow the nursing home building, but not the piece that comes down towards West Border Street, but the part that runs parallel to Hospital Road. And similarly with the boiler building, which is sort of a 2-story-ish building, and what we're proposing is another story taller than that building and another story taller than the nurses' building. So what you can see of those buildings, if you add that amount, that would be what we are. And in the main building, if you took away a little, that would be what we are.
I think what he's trying to refer to is not what the area you're talking about. He's talking, if you look at that map, where the condominiums would be, the far end, okay, on the left side.
Right.
Okay, right there, if you are viewing from that area to the left, you can see part of the old hospital, which, as you well know, is pretty centered in.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you're going to go and put those condominiums up, you say they're similar in height, but now they're much more closer to the road. So when you look from it, you're taking out the sky. You're literally going to have a great percentage of the sky view taken away. When you look up, you will see nothing but building up there.
Well, I think you will see building through the trees. I'd have to go actually measure those trees to understand how tall they are, but we would have a 4-story building that sits at the end of that parking area. But I would venture that most of those trees are more than 40 feet tall.
I can see the hospital, which is way back,
yes,
with those same trees.
I'm not saying you can't see it. I'm trying to give you a sense of, you made it sound like it towers over the trees. I don't think that's the case.
It obviously is going to be the case. I mean, how you can stand there and say it's not going to be the case it's ridiculous.
The trees are the height that they are, and the building is the height that we've described.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. I can see the hospital from that that sidewalk across from Murray Road, I can see that far back in. Now, if those buildings are the same height as that hospital, and they are greater, much closer to that side of the hill, how can you stand there and say the view won't be any different?
These buildings are smaller than the hospital, and yes, your view will be different.
Did you say
but
it was 3 stories high?
I said it was 4 stories.
How tall is the hospital?
The hospital building is 4, 5, and 6 with an additional full story of mechanical equipment on top.
Well, I can see the part of the hospital by the old ambulance entrance, and that can't be more than 3 stories high.
It's 4 stories over parking with the new portion?
Not the portion in the front where it's where you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the portion on the backside where the ambulance and emergency room is. That part was not, that's not 5 stories high there. At best, it's 3, or as you like to say, 3.5.
I think it's 4, but that's equivalent.
Okay, then the same height as the building you're putting up there now.
Oh, yeah. I see some hands on coming from around.
Okay. My name is Peter Paul. I live in 557 Pleasant Street. On December 17, the Maxine Action Housing Committee had a meeting with you.
Yes.
Right? We're talking about, vaccination for one more affordable house in Malden. We talked about that, and you said you will think about it, right?
Right.
Okay. The rent for the two bedroom apartment should be 2,500. The rent.
Yes.
2,500 a month, you say?
Yes.
A month. So that can be an affordable house, right?
I think what you're asking is for us to make a commitment today to choose how the mitigation dollars that we have put together get spent, and I think that's part of a public process that we have yet to go through. But we know that that's one of the choices that's on the table, among many others. And our job is to understand those choices and then try and create some kind of a model that will allow the permitting process to make that choice.
So that's how you will consider some of the apartment set to affordable house.
That's one of the possibilities if that, as we go through the permitting process, that's a choice that, people really want to make.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Who else had their hand up before they get? Sure. You all set? Somebody over there? Sorry,
You mentioned that most of these units, or the cottages, are going to be marketed toward empty nesters. Is that going to be a deed restriction that's 55 plus, or how will that be accomplished? Because when you said it's 2,500 square feet, if there's many families are attracted to this community, it could possibly overburden the school. $2,500. No, the cottages are going to be 16, if I recall, 1,600 to 2,500 square feet.
I was actually describing the cottages down at Pine Hills. But it's a good example and a good answer to your question. So they're not deed restricted to over 55. And in fact, most of Pine Hills is not as well. But our design orientation is clearly to empty nesters. And the world is a different place than it was when I grew up. When I grew up, 1 out of every 2 households, more than 1 out of every 2 households had kids. And today, that's just not the case. The average in our state is that about 100% of the school kids come from about 27% of the households. So there's been a real shift so that most of the world actually doesn't have kids in their household. And we live in a state that has the highest percentage of housing with the master bedroom on the 2nd floor and the oldest housing in the 50 states in terms of average years. What we want to supply is housing that is oriented to empty nesters by design, whether that's by being attached townhouses or apartment style or single-family homes that have master bedrooms on the first floor, which is exactly what we do at Pine Hills. We have 1,900 families living at Pine Hills today, and there are 42 children in the Plymouth Public School system.
Any other questions? I know it's getting the wee hours. It's probably going to start snowing soon. So, okay, so we have to go in the front row. I want everybody to have that chance to speak to at least get a question in. Good, man. Can we hold it? I'll hold it.
I'm a resident of Murray Hill Road, and that would be very close to the side where most of the construction would be, or a lot of it. And you mentioned the possibility of blasting of underground parking, and would that damage any property of the surrounding area?
Our objective, if possible, is to do no blasting. Now, we don't know enough about the site today to know if that's possible, but we would like to build our structured parking in the existing footprint of the buildings, and then there are some places where there is fill that we can excavate, such as the end of the parking lot, so that's not rock there. Our objective is to do the parking in that manner rather than to blast to create the parking.
All right, who had the hand up? I'm getting off with number. All right. You want to go, Jeff?
You mentioned earlier about the Mass legislative about they did some sort of rule about where the Congress donated the land and the money and the millions of dollars and whatnot of today's value, and that's all.
All of that is expired. It's expired because they were required after 30 years to go back to the registry and say that we still have an interest in the property.
And what law was that you mentioned?
I have the laws. If you want to see me, I can pull out the paper.
And so you said that the descendants of Congress and all those other Maldonians need to update that every 30 years to say, yes, that's what my grandfather wanted?
That's correct.
Seems odd.
It seems odd to you, but if you looked across the state, the legislature thought it was a reasonable thing to do because there were a lot of properties that had similar issues.
It's not an issue. You deed it, you deed it. Right, it's not your problem.
Go ahead, sir. You want to read back up?
I don't even like, Councillor Spadafora, you said that we'd be doing some more decision-making tonight, show of hands and so on and so forth, after the presentation. I would request that we could do that without the developers here.
Sure. Is there any other questions before we do that?
No, sorry.
All set? All right, I want to thank everybody for coming. Please, before you stay, so we take a little show of hands.